Where did my name go? I asked, even though I could see exactly where it had been. The white paint was still fresh on the mailbox, thick enough to hide the faded black letters Richard had stenciled there 18 years ago. Richard and Marjorie Langford. In their place, a new brass plate gleamed in the morning sun. Caleb and Vanessa. I stood at the end of my driveway with one hand resting on the cold metal post, staring at the spot where my name had been as if someone had erased a line from my own history. Vanessa was kneeling beside a tray of flowers near the porch, wearing gardening gloves and one of those pale linen shirts she always managed to keep spotless. She glanced over her shoulder. "Marjorie, please don't make this into something bigger than it is." The mailbox looked old. I looked at her, then at the fresh paint. "You could have painted around the names." She gave a small sigh, the kind people use when they believe they are being patient with a child. "Caleb and I live here now. If you enjoy family betrayal stories, hidden wills, and mothers who finally receive justice, subscribe to EverNest Stories. More powerful stories are coming every day." It made sense to update it. Caleb was standing just inside the open garage, holding a cardboard box filled with tools that had belonged to his father. He had heard every word. I knew because his shoulders went stiff. For 1 second I waited for him to say something. Anything. He could have laughed and told Vanessa to put my name back. He could have reminded her whose house this was. He could have simply looked at me. Instead, he carried the box deeper into the garage. That silence hurt more than the paint. I ran my thumb lightly over the edge of the mailbox. Richard had built the wooden post himself after a winter storm knocked the old one crooked. He had spent an entire Saturday measuring, sanding, and complaining that hardware stores never carried the exact screws he wanted. I could still remember him stepping back afterward with his hands on his hips and saying, "There. Now the mailman knows exactly where the Langfords live." For years I had thought of it as nothing more than a mailbox. That morning it felt like a boundary marker. Vanessa returned to her flowers. "Honestly, Marjorie, it's just paint." I nodded once. "Of course." I surprised myself with how calm my voice sounded. I didn't argue. I didn't ask Caleb to come outside. I didn't demand that Vanessa fix it. I simply walked back toward the house, passing the hydrangeas Richard had planted along the front steps and the porch swing where we used to drink coffee every Sunday morning. By lunchtime, Vanessa was talking about replacing the dining room light fixture. Caleb was answering emails at the kitchen island. I made myself a turkey sandwich and said nothing about the mailbox. At 2:17 that afternoon, the doorbell rang. A postal carrier stood on the porch holding a large white envelope and a small electronic pad. "Marjorie Langford?" he asked. Vanessa appeared behind me almost immediately. "I'll take it for her." The carrier looked at the envelope, then back at me. "I need her signature." I signed. The return address in the upper left corner made my fingers go cold. County Probate Court. Vanessa leaned closer. "Anything important?" I turned the envelope over in my hands. "Probably just paperwork." I carried it upstairs, closed my bedroom door, and sat at Richard's old desk. The first page was titled Notice of Hearing. I read the next 3 lines twice. Then I saw Caleb's name. By the time I reached the second page, I understood why my name disappearing from the mailbox had bothered me so much. Vanessa had not been updating anything. She had been practicing. 11 months earlier, I still believed letting Caleb and Vanessa move in was an act of kindness on both sides. Richard had been gone for less than a year, and the house had developed a strange kind of silence after his funeral. I could hear the refrigerator turn on from the living room. I could hear the clock above the fireplace marking every minute. I had lived in that house for 27 years, but without Richard, some rooms felt larger than they had before. One rainy afternoon, I slipped on the wet edge of the front porch while carrying groceries. I did not fall. I caught the railing, steadied myself, and went inside. By dinner, Caleb knew about it. Vanessa had called to check on me earlier, and I had mentioned it without thinking. They arrived the next morning with coffee and concerned faces. "You should not be here doing everything alone," Caleb said. Vanessa placed her hand over mine at the kitchen table. "We could stay for a few weeks. Just until you feel settled again." I told them I was fine. They insisted. 6 weeks sounded harmless. Their apartment lease was ending anyway, Caleb said, and it would give them time to decide where they wanted to move next. At first, having them there felt almost comforting. Vanessa brought groceries home before I could make a list. She organized my prescription bottles by day. She showed me how to pay the electric bill online after the company changed its website. Caleb fixed the loose hinge on the pantry door and trimmed the branches hanging over the driveway. For the first time since Richard died, I heard another person moving around downstairs when I woke up in the morning. I mistook activity for warmth. 6 weeks became 2 months. Then 3. Nobody mentioned the apartment anymore. Vanessa began saying things like, "I already took care of that," whenever I reached for a bill. She switched several statements to paperless delivery because, according to her, envelopes were clutter. She created a calendar on her tablet for my appointments and told me it was easier if everything stayed in one place. I thanked her. That was the part one remembered most clearly while sitting at Richard's desk with the court papers in my lap. I had thanked her. Small changes continued so quietly that I never thought to count them. A stack of Richard's magazines disappeared from the den. His favorite chair was moved 6 feet closer to the window because Vanessa said the room needed better balance. One morning I found 3 family photo albums boxed in the basement. They were collecting dust, she explained. Caleb always had a reason ready when I complained. "Vanessa is just trying to help, Mom." So I stopped complaining. Then the language began to change. It was no longer my kitchen. It became the kitchen. My guest room became Vanessa's office. The cabinet where Richard kept tax records became storage Caleb needed for work. Even questions about me started being answered by Vanessa before I could speak. "Marjorie does not like driving after dark. Marjorie gets overwhelmed by paperwork. Marjorie forgets appointments sometimes." Each statement contained just enough truth to sound reasonable. I had never liked driving after dark. I disliked complicated forms. I had once written the wrong time for a dental cleaning. Ordinary things. Human things. But Vanessa collected them as if they meant something larger. Back then I thought she was trying to make my life easier. Sitting alone with that court notice, I finally understood that she had been building a record long before I knew there was a case. After that, I began noticing how often decisions were made around me instead of with me. Vanessa replaced the curtains in the living room because she said the old ones made the room look tired. She ordered a new rug without asking and moved Richard's reading lamp into the basement because it did not match the furniture she wanted. None of those things were important by themselves. That was what made them so easy to accept. A lamp, a rug, a set of curtains. I told myself that people living under the same roof needed room to feel comfortable. Then one Saturday morning, I walked past Richard's old study and found Vanessa sitting behind his desk with her laptop open. The framed photograph of Richard and me from our 25th anniversary had been moved to a shelf near the floor. "I hope you do not mind," she said. "I need somewhere quiet for work calls." I looked at the room where Richard had handled our taxes, written birthday cards, and spent Sunday afternoons reading the newspaper. "You could have asked." Vanessa smiled as if I had misunderstood something. "I thought Caleb already told you." Caleb had not. That became another pattern. Vanessa assumed Caleb had told me. Caleb assumed Vanessa had told me. Somehow, I was always the last person to know what was happening in my own house. A few weeks later, I opened the hall closet and found 2 boxes of Richard's belongings stacked by the door. His winter coats, his old baseball cap, the small wooden case that held his cuff links. "Why are these here?" I asked. Caleb looked up from his phone. "Vanessa is clearing some space." "For what?" He hesitated. "Just making things more functional." Functional. Vanessa liked that word. The dining room needed to be more functional. The guest room needed to be more functional. The garage needed to be more functional. Every time something became more functional, a little more of my life disappeared. One evening I was carrying a cup of tea toward the kitchen when I heard their voices from the family room. Vanessa was speaking quietly, but the house was still enough for every word to carry. "She does not need 3 bedrooms. Caleb answered after a pause. "Not yet." I stopped beside the wall. I did not move. I did not breathe loudly. I simply stood there holding the warm mug between both hands. "Not yet." Those 2 words stayed with me long after the conversation moved on. They did not sound like concern. They sounded like timing. A few days later, My friend Denise Parker stopped by with a blueberry loaf from the bakery she liked downtown. Denise had known me for more than 20 years and had never learned how to visit briefly. We sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee while Vanessa worked upstairs. Denise picked up an envelope near the fruit bowl and frowned. "Did you change the electric account?" she asked. I looked at her. "No." She turned the statement toward me. The service address was still mine, but the contact email listed Vanessa's address. My phone number was gone. "Maybe she did it for paperless billing," I said. Denise did not answer immediately. She just looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "Marjorie, helping someone and replacing someone are not the same thing." I gave a small laugh because I wanted the sentence to feel dramatic. It did not. That night, after everyone went to bed, I opened the drawer where I kept household records. The folder containing last year's utility statements was missing. So were 2 property tax notices I remembered placing there. I checked the desk, the kitchen cabinet, the file box in my bedroom. Nothing. For the first time, I did not tell myself Vanessa was simply being organized. I stood in the dark hallway and looked toward the closed door of Richard's study, now Vanessa's office. Then I went back to my room and wrote down every change I could remember. I sat at Richard's desk until the late afternoon light shifted across the floor, reading the court notice one line at a time. The words were formal and careful, but their meaning was not. A petition had been filed asking the county probate court to consider whether I was still capable of managing my own financial affairs. My son, Caleb Langford, was listed as the proposed conservator. I read his name again, then again. For several seconds it looked unfamiliar, as if it belonged to someone else's son. The petition described me as increasingly forgetful, confused about household expenses, unable to keep appointments, and at risk of making poor financial decisions. I kept turning pages. There were dates beside each claim. Some of them I recognized immediately. A late electric payment from February, a missed appointment with my eye doctor in March, a returned automatic payment from my checking account in April, a property tax reminder that had supposedly gone unanswered. On paper, the pattern looked troubling. Sitting there, I could understand how a stranger might believe it. That was the clever part. The facts were not completely invented. They had simply been arranged without the truth around them. The electric bill had been late after Vanessa changed the account to paperless statements and used her email address. I had missed the eye appointment because the office called to reschedule, and Vanessa had written the new time into the calendar on her tablet without telling me. The return payment happened after an automatic transfer was changed, while Vanessa was helping me reorganize monthly expenses. The property tax notice was one of the papers that had disappeared from my filing drawer. I placed the pages side by side on the desk. For months, I had treated each incident as an inconvenience. Now they looked connected. The petition also claimed that Caleb and Vanessa had been providing essential daily assistance because I struggled with ordinary responsibilities. I almost laughed when I read that sentence. I still cooked my own meals. I still drove to the grocery store. I balanced my checking account every Sunday evening, just as Richard and I had done for years. I renewed my homeowner's insurance myself. I had even prepared the documents for my accountant 3 months earlier. None of that appeared in the petition. There was only the version of me that needed supervision. A smaller version. A weaker version. A woman I barely recognized. Then I reached an attachment summarizing the house. 3 bedrooms. 2.5 bathrooms. Approximately 2,400 square feet. Mortgage paid in full. Estimated market value listed beside it. I stared at that number longer than I wanted to admit. The house was not simply mentioned as my residence. It was listed as an asset requiring management. That changed something inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Clarity. I thought about Vanessa saying I did not need 3 bedrooms. I thought about Caleb answering, "Not yet." I thought about my name disappearing from utility statements and Richard's records being moved from his study. Suddenly, those moments did not feel separate anymore. They formed a line. I heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly returned the papers to the envelope. Vanessa knocked once and opened the door before I answered. "Dinner will be ready in about 20 minutes, she said. Her eyes moved toward the envelope beside my hand. "Was that mail something you need help with?" I looked directly at her. "No. I can handle it. She smiled, but only for a second. After she left, I locked the desk drawer for the first time in 27 years. At dinner, I watched Vanessa move around the kitchen as if nothing had changed. She set roasted chicken on the table, reminded Caleb about a work call, and asked me whether I wanted more iced tea. Her voice was warm, almost cheerful. I wondered how many times during the past months she had spoken to me that way while quietly collecting examples of my supposed decline. Caleb barely looked up from his plate. I could have placed the court notice between us and asked him why his name was on it. I could have demanded an explanation. Instead, I asked whether the chicken had rosemary in it. Vanessa smiled. Yes. You always like it that way. I nodded and kept eating. That night, I waited until the house was quiet before calling Denise from my bedroom. I kept my voice low. I need a favor tomorrow. She did not ask unnecessary questions. What time? Around 10. The next morning I carried my purse downstairs and told Vanessa I needed groceries. She immediately offered to come with me. I can drive you. That is all right, I said. Denise wants to try the new market near downtown. Vanessa looked disappointed for less than a second. Do not forget your phone. I smiled. I will not. Denise was waiting 3 blocks away in her blue sedan. I climbed into the passenger seat and handed her the court envelope. She read only the first page before her expression changed. Marjorie, this is serious. I know. Does Caleb know you received it? Not from me. She folded the paper carefully. Where are we going? I gave her an address on West Franklin Street. Rebecca Sloan had practiced elder law for more than 20 years. Richard and I had met her years earlier when we updated our estate documents after Caleb got married. I had not spoken to her since Richard's funeral. Her office was on the 2nd floor of a brick building, above a small insurance agency. Rebecca came into the waiting room herself when she saw my name. Marjorie. She hugged me gently, then looked at Denise. Come in. Both of you. I placed the petition on her desk. Rebecca read in silence. She did not react dramatically. She turned each page, made several notes, and asked me precise questions. Who paid the bills? Who had access to online accounts? Had I signed any power of attorney documents recently? Had Vanessa or Caleb ever spoken to my doctors? Who received household mail? I answered everything I could. Rebecca asked me the current balance of my checking account. I told her within a few dollars. She asked when property taxes were due. I gave her the month and approximate amount. She asked which insurance company covered the house. I named it and told her when the policy renewed. Rebecca leaned back. Has anyone evaluated you medically for incapacity? No. Has any doctor told you that you should stop managing your finances? No. She tapped one finger lightly against the petition. Then we are not going to argue with their story. We are going to document yours. Something about that sentence steadied me. Rebecca explained that I needed copies of bank statements, tax records, the deed, insurance documents, medical records, and any evidence showing who had changed account settings or redirected communication. She also wanted a written timeline of every incident I could remember. Do not confront them yet, she said. If they think you know everything, they may change their behavior. I thought about Vanessa asking whether my mail was important. She already suspects something. Rebecca closed the folder. Then give her nothing. Denise drove me home shortly after noon. I carried 2 grocery bags inside so the trip looked ordinary. Vanessa was standing at the kitchen counter. Her eyes moved from the bags to my face. Find everything you needed? She asked. I set a carton of milk in the refrigerator. Not everything, I said, but enough to get started. The next 3 days taught me how much of my own life had been moved just beyond my reach. I started with the bank. Rebecca had told me not to log into anything from the computer Vanessa used in Richard's study, so Denise drove me to a branch across town. I brought my identification, my checkbook, and the small notebook where I had begun writing dates. The branch manager printed 12 months of statements and helped me review the account settings. My mailing address had not changed, but the electronic contact information had. Vanessa's email was listed for alerts. My own email was still there, buried as a secondary contact. I stared at the screen. Who made that change? I asked. The manager checked the activity log. It was done online in January. January. The same month Vanessa had told me she was simplifying my bills. I wrote the date down. From there, I went to the county recorder's office and requested a certified copy of the deed. My name was there. Marjorie Langford. Sole owner after Richard's death, exactly as our estate documents had intended. I held the paper for several seconds before putting it into the folder Rebecca had given me. Something about seeing my name printed in black ink steadied me more than I expected. The house had not forgotten who I was. People had. The following morning, I called Dr. Helen Mercer, my physician for almost 15 years. I told the receptionist I needed an appointment and asked that confirmation be sent directly to my phone, not to the house email, not through Vanessa. Dr. Mercer listened carefully when I explained the court petition. She asked me questions about medications, finances, appointments, driving, and daily routines. She gave me a simple cognitive screening and reviewed my chart. At the end, she folded her hands on the desk. Marjorie, I see no reason from today's visit to conclude that you cannot make your own decisions. I felt my shoulders drop for the first time all week. She agreed to provide Rebecca with appropriate medical documentation. Back home I continued quietly. I found old tax returns in a storage bin Vanessa had moved to the basement. I photographed utility statements. I wrote down every appointment I had attended during the past year. Denise began checking her doorbell camera recordings because part of my driveway and front porch appeared at the edge of the frame. 2 evenings later she called me. I found something. I went to her house after telling Vanessa I was taking a walk. Denise paused the video on her television. The date was from the week before the mailbox changed. Vanessa stood near the curb with a paint can, a brush, and a small brass plate in her hand. She looked toward the house twice before she started. I watched without speaking. It was not dramatic. That was what made it useful. She had planned it. Denise copied the clip onto a small drive for Rebecca. But the most important piece came from somewhere I did not expect. Rebecca called the next afternoon. I need you to come in. Her voice was calm but different. When Denise and I arrived, Rebecca placed a printed email on the desk between us. It had been obtained through documents connected to the court filing. The sender was Vanessa. The recipient was a local real estate agent. The date was 3 weeks before the hearing. I read the sentence twice. We expect to have control of the property after the hearing, and we would like an estimate of what it could sell for quickly. I did not say anything. Rebecca slid another page toward me. It was a reply discussing recent sales in my neighborhood. My house. My kitchen. Richard's porch. The hydrangeas outside the window. Vanessa had already started asking what they were worth before a judge had decided anything at all. Rebecca watched my face. This changes the picture. I folded the email carefully and placed it inside my folder. No, I said. It explains the picture. 3 days before the hearing, Caleb asked if we could talk after dinner. Vanessa had cleared the table unusually quickly and left 3 brochures beside my coffee cup. The covers showed smiling gray-haired couples walking beside a pond, eating lunch in a bright dining room, and sitting beneath a sign that read Independent Senior Living. I looked at the brochures, then at my son. Caleb folded his hands on the table. Mom, we have been thinking about what would make life easier for you. Vanessa leaned forward with the expression she used whenever she wanted concern to sound like certainty. There is a community about 20 minutes from here. It is beautiful. No stairs to worry about. They have transportation, meals, activities, even someone to help with appointments. I ran one finger along the edge of the nearest brochure. I already have transportation. Vanessa smiled. For now. Those 2 words sounded familiar. Caleb shifted in his chair. It is not about taking anything away from you. It is about making sure you are safe. I looked toward the kitchen window. Outside, Richard's hydrangeas moved gently in the evening breeze. I had spent 27 years watching those bushes grow from small plants into something wide enough to cover half the fence. And what happens to this house? I asked. The room became quiet. Vanessa answered first. We would handle it. Handle it how? She glanced at Caleb. Whatever makes the most financial sense. Selling it would probably be best. The market is still strong around here. I looked at my son. Is that what you want? Caleb rubbed his thumb across the edge of his coffee mug. I want you taken care of. That was not what I asked. He finally met my eyes. For a moment I saw the boy who used to leave muddy sneakers by the back door and ask Richard to help him with science projects. Then the moment passed. Mom, trust us. I thought about the printed email in Rebecca's folder. I thought about the real estate estimate Vanessa had requested before anyone had even spoken to me about moving. I thought about the court petition describing me as confused while the two people sitting across from me had already discussed the future of my property. Vanessa pushed the brochure closer. You do not have to decide tonight. I turned a page. The photographs were lovely. Wide hallways. A library. A garden. People playing cards beneath soft lights. There was nothing wrong with the place. That was not the point. The problem was that everyone at the table except me had apparently decided I belonged there. I closed the brochure. All right, I said. Vanessa blinked. All right. I will think about it. Her shoulders relaxed. Caleb exhaled quietly. Vanessa reached across the table and touched my hand. That is all we are asking. I smiled. Of course. Later that evening, I carried the brochures upstairs and placed them beside the court papers. I did not throw them away. Rebecca had taught me that even ordinary paper could tell a story when placed beside the right evidence. The next morning, Denise drove me to Rebecca's office for our final preparation meeting. Rebecca already had her laptop open when I walked in. Something came in this morning, she said. She turned the screen toward me. It was a screenshot from documents produced through the case. Vanessa had sent a message to the same real estate agent shortly after our conversation. The timestamp was 9:46 the night before. Her message was brief. Looks like she is finally accepting it. We should be ready to move quickly after the hearing. I read it once and sat back. Rebecca watched me carefully. Are you all right? I looked at the sentence again. Yes. And for the first time I meant it. Vanessa believed my silence meant surrender. She had no idea I had stopped defending myself to her, because I was saving every answer for someone who could actually do something with it. On the morning of the hearing, I dressed the way I had for every important appointment Richard and I ever attended together. Navy slacks. A cream blouse. Low black shoes. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that asked to be noticed. Vanessa wore a fitted gray suit and carried a leather handbag I had seen her use only for business meetings. Caleb looked tired. He avoided my eyes while we stood near the courthouse entrance. I had told them Denise was driving me because I did not want to deal with downtown parking. They accepted that explanation. What they did not expect was Rebecca waiting just inside the lobby. Vanessa saw her first. Her expression changed so quickly that I almost missed it. The smile disappeared. Caleb stopped walking. Rebecca stepped toward me and held out her hand. Good morning, Marjorie. I took it. Good morning. Nobody asked why she was there. They already knew. The hearing room was smaller than I imagined, with plain walls, rows of wooden benches, and a clock that seemed louder than necessary. I sat beside Rebecca. Caleb and Vanessa sat across the aisle with their attorney. For weeks I had pictured this moment as something enormous. Instead, it felt strangely ordinary. Papers moved. Names were called. People spoke in calm voices. That helped me. The petition sounded less powerful once it had to stand beside actual records. Their attorney described missed payments, confusion about appointments, and concern over my ability to manage the house. Rebecca did not interrupt. She waited. Then she began with the electric bill. The account history showed that electronic notices had been redirected to Vanessa's email before the late payment occurred. Next came the doctor's appointment. Dr. Mercer's office records showed the time had been changed and confirmation had not been sent directly to me. The automatic payment issue followed. Then the property tax notice that had disappeared from my files. One by one, the examples that had looked troubling on paper became something else when the full sequence was shown. Rebecca placed my bank statements before the court. My checking account balanced. My retirement deposits were regular. My insurance was current. My tax filings were complete. Dr. Mercer's written evaluation stated clearly that I was able to understand and manage my own decisions. Vanessa sat very still. Caleb kept looking down at his hands. Then Rebecca introduced the email to the real estate agent. The room seemed to grow quieter. She read only the necessary part. Vanessa had expected control of the property after the hearing and wanted an estimate for a quick sale. Their attorney objected to the implication, but the message remained in the record. Then came the follow-up text from 3 nights earlier. Looks like she is finally accepting it. We should be ready to move quickly after the hearing. Vanessa's face lost color. I did not look at her for long. I looked at Caleb. That was harder. Rebecca asked him whether he had known Vanessa contacted a real estate agent before the hearing. He hesitated. I knew she was looking at options. For a house your mother still owns? Another pause. We thought it might become necessary. Necessary. The same word people use when they want a decision to sound inevitable. When it was my turn to speak, I kept my hands folded in my lap. I did not accuse anyone. I did not raise my voice. I simply answered the questions I was asked. Yes, I managed my finances. Yes, I understood the value of my home. Yes, I knew why the hearing had been requested. Then I was asked what I wanted. I looked directly ahead. I want to continue making my own decisions. The judge reviewed the documents for several minutes before speaking. The petition had not established what it needed to establish. There was not enough evidence to remove my control over my own affairs. I heard Vanessa shift in her chair. Caleb closed his eyes briefly. Rebecca touched the edge of my folder, but she did not smile. Neither did I. Walking out of the courthouse, Vanessa finally spoke. Marjorie, you made this look much worse than it was. I stopped beside the stone steps and looked at her. No. Vanessa. I brought the missing pages. The first thing I did after the hearing was not celebrate. I made appointments. Rebecca helped me close every door I had left open because I believed family did not need boundaries. I changed the passwords on my bank accounts. I removed Vanessa's email from every utility and insurance account. I arranged for paper statements to come directly to me again. I placed copies of the deed, tax records, medical documents, and Richard's estate papers in a safe deposit box that only I could access. Then I updated my estate plan. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I had finally learned the difference between love and permission. Caleb and Vanessa came home that evening without speaking much. Vanessa went upstairs. Caleb remained in the kitchen while I sorted the mail at the counter. Mom, he said quietly. I kept opening envelopes. Yes. I am sorry. I looked at him. He appeared older than he had that morning. For what? He swallowed. For letting it get this far. That answer mattered more than a polished apology. He was not blaming Vanessa. Not entirely. You knew enough to stop it, I said. He nodded. I did. I set the mail down. Then you understand why things have to change. 2 days later, Rebecca prepared written notice giving Caleb and Vanessa time to arrange another place to live under the proper process. I did not put their belongings on the lawn. I did not humiliate them. I gave them time, dates, and clear expectations. Vanessa called it cruel. I thought about the senior living brochure she had placed in front of me as if my future were already decided. You have options, I told her. I am simply choosing mine. She stopped speaking to me after that. The house became filled with cardboard boxes. This time they were not Richard's. Caleb carried his own things into the garage. Vanessa packed her office. I watched the framed photograph from my 25th anniversary return to Richard's desk. I dusted it and put it back where it had always belonged. 3 weeks later, their moving truck pulled away. Caleb hugged me before he left. Vanessa stood beside the passenger door with her arms folded. I did not ask her to forgive me, and I did not offer forgiveness simply because the moment seemed to require it. Caleb whispered, I hope we can fix this someday. I looked at him for a long moment. Maybe. But forgiveness and access are not the same thing. After they left, the house felt quiet again. This time the silence did not feel empty. Felt like space. Denise came over the following Saturday carrying a toolbox and 2 cups of coffee. Together we removed the old mailbox. I could still see the uneven white paint Vanessa had brushed across the faded letters. I did not sand it down. I did not restore what had been there before. Richard was gone, and pretending otherwise would not honor him. I bought a new black mailbox with a simple silver plate. Denise held it steady while I tightened the screws. When we finished, I stepped back. Marjorie Langford. Nothing else. A week later, the mail carrier left the first postcard inside. It was from an old friend in Maine, inviting me to visit in October when the leaves changed. I stood at the end of the driveway reading it while the morning air moved through the hydrangeas. Then I went inside, opened my calendar, and wrote down the dates myself. Subscribe to EverNest Stories for more emotional family betrayal stories, inheritance secrets, and mother's justice. And watch the next story on screen now.